So after a 1-week hiatus, welcome back to the Five Guys. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and then 5 Reasons Sports. And we got Alex Donno. You can follow him conveniently enough at Alex Donno. We're going to talk Heat today. Before we do, though, we want to introduce a great sponsor of this show, Five on the Floor and the 5 Reasons Sports Network in general, our friends over at Jersey's 305.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with 5 Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
Right. Oh, there we go. And of course, the Miami Heat are part of that vintage collection there. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm heading down to the arena shortly. The Heat host the Knicks tonight. Big week. They get the Knicks tonight. They get the Sixers on Thursday, likely with Embiid playing. And then on Friday, they go to Houston, a team that is trying to get into the play-in. The Heat are trying to get out of the play-in in the Eastern Conference. But Alex, we wanted to talk Heat today because, again, it is setting up a big week. There is this debate, okay, and I see it on our playback, on 5 on the Floor, and everywhere we interact with Heat fans on our Discord as well, which is, do you prioritize rest and health, or do you prioritize seed? And I was curious for your thoughts on this because this is going to come up over the last 8 games as they try to catch Indiana, maybe Orlando, to get out of the play-in situation. Where do you stand on this?
No, I prioritize seed. And I've heard the argument. I understand what the argument is. I just wholeheartedly disagree with it. So the argument is, hey, rest your players. You can't really fall out of the play-in at this point. So you try to get your bodies healthy. But to me, Ethan, when you're talking about a 1-game sample in the play-in, it's still way too random and anything can happen. I mean, you mentioned how close the Heat were to getting eliminated by Chicago in that second play-in game last year. Like they were 4 minutes away from getting bounced and, not even making it to the first round of what turned into a finals run. So the other thing about this is, yes, I do prioritize seeding because, I'd much rather open up the playoffs, against Cleveland than to have to open up against Boston or Milwaukee. Like, I don't think it's too hard to distinguish the difference there. That could set you up for a deeper run. People just assume that, hey, if you prioritize some rest for this final stretch of the season, then that means everyone's going to be automatically healthy and it's okay. Or if you don't prioritize rest, then guys are going to get more banged up. You're making a lot of assumptions there. Like you're turning something into just such a black or white argument when I think that a lot of this falls into the shades of gray. So the idea of trying to be the 6th seed and getting a more favorable opening round and not having to worry about the randomness of the play-in, I'm all in on that. What about you?
Well, see, this is the thing. I think that people have made this a 2-option argument when it's really not. In this sense, you can prioritize health and rest by getting out of the play-in because you get a week off.
Yeah.
So to me, it's, do you really want to be playing 2 days after the season ends, hosting a home game? We saw, hosting a playing game. We saw what happened last year. They ended up getting bounced into the 8th seed and had to survive against Chicago. They were down with 3 minutes left. So you don't want to be in that situation again. And when we talk about people like, again, Kevin Love, who's likely to return this week now, but we've been saying that for 3 weeks, but it does seem like that's actually going to happen. But also Jimmy Butler, and some of the guys who've just been nursing injuries all year, like Caleb Martin and some of the others, getting that week's rest is important. It also allows you to kind of zero in on an opponent. In the case of the play-in, you get 7, you get bounced to 8, then all of a sudden it's a different opponent than you would have had at 7, and that's even if you make the playoffs at all. And again, do you really want to be in a situation where not only do you risk not making the playoffs, but then if you get bounced to 8 and you win that game, you're opening with the Celtics. Now,
Right.
I don't think they fear the Celtics, but you would like to delay that as long as
Yeah.
possible because it just seems like the other matchups in the Eastern Conference, whether it be Cleveland, in particular, I think, but even Milwaukee, New York, or I don't think there's a fear of those teams from the Heat. There's not a fear of Boston, but clearly they're a better constructed team than some of the others.
I mean, I'd love to face the Knicks again in the play. I know the Heat are going to be facing the Knicks tonight. I'd love to face them again in the playoffs. That's been something in recent years the Heat have had success in. And then, listen, that's a rivalry to me. Like I'm jealous you're headed down to the arena a little bit because even though obviously these aren't your 1997 Miami Heat, they're not your 1999 New York Knicks, but I still. To me, Ethan, I don't know if I ever would have become the rabid Miami Heat fan I became as, preteen and teenager when those playoff series were happening. Like it got me so into basketball. Like there was nothing like it in the late 90s, especially the series the Heat actually won against the Knicks. I know they dropped most of those. There was nothing like that. As a South Florida hockey fan, there was nothing like the 1996 Florida Panthers. It's like the memories that you can make when you get some of these great playoff series and playoff rivalries. There is nothing like it.
Well, the thing about that rivalry is that we'll never see anything like it again. And the reason I say that is you had 4 straight series, so 4 straight postseasons that they played each other, and each time it went to the deciding game. Once to 5 games when it was a 5-game series,
That's
the
right.
other times to 7 games. And of course, the Heat lost 3 of those series. They won one when there were a bunch of players suspended and all the rest of them. But it was also the backstory of all of it to have Riley going against his old team, but also his protege Jeff Van Gundy taking over the Knicks. And then beyond that, you had later on you had Sprewell and Hardaway had issues in Golden State, and then they were going up against each other, and it's just, and then there were new rivalries created during it, like PJ Brown and Charlie Ward, which was totally random because there were two, like PJ was the nicest guy I've ever covered with the Miami Heat, and Charlie Ward was a very biased, athlete, and here, you've got PJ flipping Charlie Ward after he had been antagonized, and so it was just that kind of stuff. Well, again, we'll never really see it that way again. I mean, there was also issues between Zoe and LJ, which
Yeah.
dated back to their days in Charlotte, and were very, very. I'll just leave it at this: they were very personal type issues, and that was under the surface as well. So you had all of these things that were going on during those series, and it hasn't really been replicated since.
Well, there
with
have
the Heat
been
and the
some
Knicks.
moments, right? I mean,
There have been
single-handedly
moments.
ending Linsanity, right? I mean, the
Yes,
Heat
yes,
squash Linsanity.
yes. Chalmers and Cole.
Amari Stoudemire and the fire extinguisher.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And of course, you had Dwayne had this great game after Danilo Gallinari hit him in the face.
yeah.
There are a whole bunch of things that have happened between the teams. Wade had the band. What was it? The Wade
Van
Aid,
Wade.
like
Van Wade.
Van Wade game. So there have been moments between the two of them, but the playoff series, both of them. Well, the second one, this last one last year, was interesting in the sense that Brunson, became a star, I think, in that series. Like he had shown signs of it, but I mean, the respect that they have for Brunson is enormous. And as we talk about the game tonight, he's the key because Anunoby is still out. Randall is still out. It does not seem like either's coming back anytime soon. So Tibbs is basically just, he's just dragging his guys to 45 minutes. I mean, he's playing like McBride 43 minutes, and Josh Hart in the 40s. And what will be interesting for the Knicks is if either of those two guys return, and there's no real guarantee with Randall. Anunoby, I think, is going to return, but he tends to take a while to come back from injuries. Then it's like, okay, well, you would think then he'd have a bench ready to go with some of these guys who've been playing 40 plus minutes, but he'll just play Anunoby, Randall, Brunson 45 minutes and not play the other guys anyway. That's his tradition. So they're an interesting team, but it really does start with Brunson. And and then Spo got a chance to work with Brunson this summer as well. So there's a little of a relationship that's been developed. This between the two of them. But Alice, I guess I'll go to you on this, and then after the break, we'll kind of close projecting forward. Are you disappointed that the Heat are in this position now? That they have to drag themselves out of this?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, we go back to however many weeks ago it was when they had that winning run that they were on, right? 8 out of 9, and I'm thinking, okay, this team is not going to fall into that play and trap again. But yeah, it's gotten to a point where a Miami Heat regular season just feels like an exercise in futility. They'll wake me up again, especially if they can avoid the play in. And they're only, a half game out of the 6th seed right now. So it's not as if it's unattainable. They're right there. That's why this whole rest versus seeding priority thing even comes up. But yeah, no, I'm definitely disappointed, Ethan. I mean, after seeing this team, and I know that making it to the finals, especially having to do it through the play, it's very taxing. And, there can be some carryover when you've got some older bodies. I get that. But there were enough signs earlier in the year that this can be a team that can avoid that and can play for a reasonable seed. I do know the East got better around Miami, and you look at what Milwaukee and Boston have done in the offseason. So, thinking about a 1 or a 2 seed didn't seem attainable. We know this is a team that has shown the ability to turn it on in the playoffs before, but I guess I've just been frustrated with the way that this whole regular season has gone because parts of it have felt like a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, you had the 7-game losing streak in the middle, and that's when they had some guys who were actually healthy, and so that was disappointing. And then, of course, we've had Tyler's played 36 games.
Yeah.
Jimmy's effort has been inconsistent this season. I think that's fair to say. And then, the one thing that has worked though is the trade of Lowry for Rozier has paid dividends. I mean, if you look at Rozier's numbers in March, we've talked about him 5 on the floor. He averaged 18, 5 and 5 basically, or 4.5 and 4.5 on pretty decent efficiency actually. So, and he has been a low turnover guy since he's come. So he's fit. I think he's started to find his role and where he can be more aggressive. But again, when Tyler comes back, if Tyler comes back, there's going to be another adjustment to make. All right, we'll close up this episode in a couple minutes. But first, we do want to mention a great sponsor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Water Cleanup of Florida. You can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. Make sure you get in their preventative program because we know that the insurance companies don't always take care of you after the fact. But this is your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop, so they can do it after if necessary. And they will do a good job, and they're very good. They're just honest people. They're based in Boca Raton. If they can't do the job, they will tell you. And they service all the counties down here, and they even go out to the west coast of Florida for some jobs. So check them out. The leak detection is one of the things we always talk about, very important. And the water mitigation and dry out. They do all this stuff. So check them out. Water Cleanup of Florida. Again, that's WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz, they've got the guts. All right, so let's get into prediction time here. I've said they have to go 6-2 if they're going to get out of the play-in. And one of those 6 wins has to be in Indiana.
Yes.
That's really the only way. Excuse me. Now, their last 2 games of the season are against Toronto. Toronto's lost like 14 games in a row, and they have incentive to lose those 2 games because if they are in the top 6 in the lottery, they keep their pick this year. So it's protected in that sense. And right now they are the 6th worst team in the NBA. And so they kind of have to stay worse than Memphis, and they've been doing a hell of a job of it because they've been losing every day. So those last 2 games of the season are really gimmies for the Heat, or they should be. So this is really about going 4-2 in the next 6. And to that end, that means I think, they can't be worse than 1-2 this week. Let's just put it that way. I mean, Philadelphia, New York, Philadelphia, Houston, That they may end up being 1-2, but it can't be worse than that, and that's all they can lose. And they still have Dallas on the schedule as well. I think they're going to end up 7. That's
Mm.
where I think they're going to end up. I just don't trust them to go up and win in Indiana. It's been a tough place to play for the Heat for a long time. And I don't know. I don't know if they have it in them this year. So I kind of feel like this may default to the 7 spot, as much as I would like them to be in the 6 and get the week's rest. Where do you see it going?
Well, if you're telling me they got to go 6-2, if there's a way to go 5-3 and squeeze in, I think that's a possibility. It's just, man, I think they're going to go 2-0 at least through these next 2 games. You know, they are favored by 3.5 against the Knicks tonight, which may be the kiss of death. But I think they're going to beat the Knicks. I think they're going to beat Philly on Thursday. The Indiana game I look at as a tough test, and my God, home against Dallas, crazy things can happen. Man, this is one of those things, Ethan, where they're going to end up going 5-3. They're going to be the 7 by the skin of their teeth, and we're going to have a lot of time on this network, 5 on the floor and the 5 guys talking about the disappointment, because they will only have themselves to blame, right? They're only going to have themselves to blame, and Jimmy for, and I'm sure he's going to turn it on in the play-in, and he's going to look like Superman and all that, but they're only going to have themselves to blame for seemingly not taking the regular season seriously enough. So I think they're going to go 5-3 down this stretch. Whether that's enough to avoid the play-in, we'll find out.
Well, they're going to be looking at that loss to Washington, among others. There have been some bad losses this year, but the biggest issue with this team is that they're 0-9 as a home underdog this year. So it is interesting they're favored against the Knicks. I thought they might be a pick'em or underdog. They probably won't be favored against Philly if Embiid is playing on Thursday. So I'm curious.
Right.
A lot of this has to do with the Knicks injuries. So they just haven't beaten good teams at home. They just the whole year, and that's been a big issue. And I think they are going to be pointing back to that at a certain point. So again, I think it's going to end up 7. It should have been 5 or 6, honestly, and that's kind of where it's at. Even with the injuries, they had enough, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think to edge ahead of Cleveland, which has been without a lot of players for a long time, and honestly to clear themselves of Philadelphia, which didn't have Embiid for 2 months. The fact that Philly's still in the picture with them, and now Embiid's coming back and nipping at their heels is not a great thing either. So we'll see how it plays out. I'll be at the arena tonight. Thanks to our sponsors, jerseys305.com. Water cleanup in Florida. Thanks to Alex. We will be back on Thursday.